Ahoy everybody, Commodore Vice here with another video. This time I want to try something a little different and go through 5 mistakes I see all the time from new game masters when they're running a game. I just thought I'd put this out there and hopefully help share some of the mistakes I see and teach you like why they happen and how to avoid them. Some easy alternatives maybe to what you may be trying to get across. Right, so the first one I'm going to cover is the playable cutscene, or also the overwhelming monster. They're basically the same thing. And what this is going to be like a GM wants to introduce this super cool villain that they've created, and they want to do it by, throwing them into this throwing the players into this battle with this super cool villain that they're supposed to beat at the end of the game and not at the beginning. And they do this by making them super powerful and almost impossible to beat. And it basically like playing a cutscene, or perhaps even the overwhelming monster, where somebody's like, "Well, here is a monster that is way outside of their level. They have an opportunity to avoid it. Like it's yeah, just here's how we get through this. I get why it's done. Sometimes GMs just like to show things off. Big monsters, even if they have ways for their players to avoid those big monsters, they want to be like, hey, look at how cool this big scary monster is. That is cool. I understand that. Or, they want to introduce a villain and show how imposing and scary he is. That's cool. I understand that. The only problem is why this doesn't work specifically. It leaves the players feeling like, why are we playing this? Why are we bothering? Usually, like, if they get into a fight with the big bad at the beginning of the game because you're trying to show them how cool and scary the big bad is, it often feels like, why are we bothering to do this? We're wasting time. I feel like a loser. This guy's big and scary. I can't hit him. I'm rolling and nothing is happening. Like, why are we playing this section? It leaves your players feeling like they don't have any agency, and it feels very much just kind of like, why are we spending this much time in combat when I'm obviously not able to do anything? And here's some options to kind of avoid this. If you want to introduce a big scary villain, or if you want to introduce a big scary monster, it would be really good to have a talk with your players and be like, okay, so I want to try something today, or I want to try something with this scene. Like, I want to introduce a character. Basically, explain it to your players. Be like, all right, I'm going to introduce the villain. Is it all right if I take over the narrative real quick so I can introduce this villain? Give me a little narrative fluidity. Let me take control to show you what happens, and then get them out of there. And whenever you do that, make sure you talk to your players, make sure they're okay with it. It's usually good to have that at the very beginning of the game. Be like, hey, I kind of want to do this later on. Is that okay with everybody? And then if they are okay with it, be expedient about it. Don't drag on and try and be like, oh, he whoops your butt and kicks your butt. Don't don't go into extreme detail at how he's beating them. Go into extreme detail about your villain. Be like, how he looks, how he acts. Make his conquest very swift, because you don't want your players to feel useless. You want them to go, wow, that guy is scary. He simply, with one simple action, moved us out of the way and took off. Like, you don't want to go into great detail about how he kicks everybody's butt. It'll save you time, and it'll make your players feel a lot better about themselves. Another cardinal sin I see new GMs make all the time is the opportunity to miss important clues. Now, what I mean by this is, like, there is a clue that will advance the plot, or will connect dots, or will tell the players who did something, but it's locked behind like a skill check, or a role, or some mechanic of the game. Like, D&D is a great example. Say they're investigating some crime scene to figure out who the big bad guy is. Well, let's say that there is one clue that tells them who the big bad guy is, and they have no other way of figuring out what their next step is. And the GM goes, okay, in order to find that clue, they have to make an investigation check DC 15. What if nobody finds that clue? And this is so bad because oftentimes when I see it happen, if people roll poorly and don't find the clue, the GM has to stretch things. And they're like, okay, do you want to roll? I'll give you a bonus because of this. And it's like, it makes it cheap. It makes it weird. Like, obviously they have to find that clue in order for things to progress. So why keep it behind a skill check anyway? And I know why it's done. You want to add investigation to it. You want there to be some sort of player agency in figuring out the scenario. Cool, I get that. But it doesn't work sometimes because if they don't happen to find it, even if the check is really low, or maybe they don't even bother making the check at all, like, if they don't, then you have nowhere to go from there, and they get frustrated because they're like, well, we don't know where to go. We don't, there's no guiding light. There's no clue. Like, we were unable to find anything. We don't know what to do next. We have no direction. And that's why it's so frustrating. So other options to this are simply, instead of having that clue locked behind a skill check, you can have the skill check, but have it be less of a, well, if you succeed, you find the clue. If you fail, you don't. And more of a, if you succeed, you find the clue in a short amount of time. If you fail, you stumble across the clue after a large period of time, giving your villain more time to do things and get things done, so that they don't miss the clue, but it affects the story in some way. It's always a good way to do it, or even just hand them the clue. Sometimes it's just no fun to have to roll to figure out what the next step of your plot is. So, like, going back to D&D, saying that there's that clue that they're investigating the scene, instead of going, oh, you're investigating the scene, roll perception. Okay, you don't find it. Just go, okay, you're investigating the scene? Well, you find this clue. It's a scorch mark that's only caused by such and such an action, and just give them the clue. Why? Skill checks aren't necessarily fun, so having to do a skill check to do that is, I mean, you can just give it to them sometimes. You don't have to have a skill check for absolutely everything. Alright, another one, and I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about here. NPC main characters, or GMPCs. Basically what this is an NPC that is vital to the plot and takes the place of the protagonist, or a GM who decides to play with the group and makes his own character to travel with the group. Now, I know why it happens. Sometimes the GM wants to play as well and they make a character, and this can be okay. Also, sometimes GMs want to tell their story, and in order to do that, they need to know who the protagonist is. So they make a protagonist that the heroes, or the party, have to follow or protect. And it doesn't work often. GMPCs can be okay sometimes, but I highly suggest doing a support role, because otherwise a GMPC already knows what's going on. They have a resource to all of the GM's knowledge, if they don't play in character knowledge. So it can often be that they overshadow the party a little too much. And then NPC main characters is just a bad idea. You want your heroes, you want your players to be the heroes of the campaign. Period. You want them to be the stars. If somebody else is the star, all too often your players will be like, well, why are we even here if this person is the star of this story? Make them your stars, not somebody else. Not somebody for them to goo and awe at. Doesn't work. Make them your stars solely. Don't worry about a third party. Don't add your own hero. It doesn't usually pan out well. Other options. Honestly, there isn't really another option for this. Do not make an NPC your hero. Just don't. Make your players your heroes. And then for GMPCs, yes, a GM, if you want to play along, just uh, don't use your knowledge as to what's happening. Don't try and guide the party with that character. Try and stick to support roles, because otherwise you're going to overshadow some of your players in certain aspects, and it's just they're not going to have much fun. All right, second to last mistake that I see happen a lot is railroading, and this is going to play into the last tip as well somewhat. Railroading is basically just straight up saying, okay, this is what happens, giving your players only one way to do things. Period. Um, like they say, well, why don't we try this? Well, that doesn't work. Just simply swiping their ways that they want to go about something off the board because it doesn't work, or forcibly making it so it doesn't work, so that they have to do exactly what you plan for them to do. I get it. Sometimes you just want to tell your story, but honestly, in games where it's a group storytelling effort, that's not gonna happen a lot. Okay, you gotta embrace that. You are making a story with other people. Yes, you're in charge of how the world reacts, in charge of how the characters react, but you can't just it isn't fun for everybody else if they're just listening to your narrative and you're telling them exactly how to do things. um, so instead of railroading, you should try and open up a little bit. You should be like, okay, they want to do this. All right, I didn't plan for that, and that's not the story I want to tell, but you have to get in touch with the story they want to tell as well, and you guys have to meet in the middle. So try not to tell your players what the story is going to be. Be like, this is what I'm aiming for, this is what I'd like to see, what would you like to see, and then you've got to try and plan for what you all would like to see together. And railroading can easily be avoided by having a table talk before you even start the game, before you even build the characters. Be like, okay, this is kind of the story I want to tell. What kind of stories would you guys like to see? And then right there with that conversation, you can get an idea of where they might want to go. But you have to not hold on to that idea too tightly. You can't say that there is only one option. You've got to be ready to improvise. You've got to be ready to just kind of go with the flow and figure out how the world reacts to their actions that you weren't expecting. All right, and then there's my last one, inflexibility. This is a lot like railroading, but it kind of goes beyond that a little bit. Inflexibility in saying, for example, well, I never flub the dice. Every GM should be willing to flub the dice at some point. I get it. You want to be as fair as possible, but at the same time, you don't want to crush your players' hopes and dreams unless that is exactly what you guys are expecting. In which case, if you have talked to your players and you understand that they are willing to suffer simply for the sake of fairness and they want no flub dice at all, then that's you guys. Cool. But you gotta be a little flexible. If a player wants to do something, and you're like, well, no, that's not in the rules. Well, don't just your player is trying to do something that is fun for them, that they think will be fun and creative, it's cool, that they want to see. Try and work with them. Don't just go, well, it's not in the rules, so you can't do it. That's just lame. Be a little flexible. Be like, well, it's not in the rules, but if you roll this and this and you get this, yeah, why not? Or you can try, or go ahead and give it a chance. But at the same time, you don't want to go too far with it. I mean, you don't want to have a chance for absolutely anything to happen, because then your continuity kind of breaks down. And also, inflexibility, you want to have some continuity. You don't want to allow something 1 minute and then not allow it the next. You want to have a realistic amount of flexibility. You want to give your players enough space to be creative and constructive, but at the same time, outside of the rules. But you want to stick close enough to the rules that it's not ridiculous, and why bother having rules in the first place. So you've got to have a certain measure of flexibility. But all too often, yeah, I see GMs who are just like, well, this doesn't fit in the rules, or I don't want this, or I'm saying I'm gonna do this every time, or well, no, this is the situation that has happened, so it just happens. Like, you have to work around what your players want to see, and what you want to see in your games. Like, you can't just go, well, I can't do anything about it. You're the GM. You can literally do anything about it. So just have some flexibility. That's all I gotta say. That is my number one tip. That's the one big mistake I keep seeing a lot of GMs make, is that they are just completely and utterly inflexible. You've got to loosen up. It makes everything more fun for everybody. Alright, so that was my little tip video. I might do some more of these in the future. I might just do some vlog stuff where I talk about gaming, how you can run games, how you can play games. I don't know. I might just do some general blogs or vlogs where it's just discussing gaming in general, what interests me about it, what might interest you about it, and just the hobby. So yeah, if you want to see some of that, if you want to see some of me teaching how to play certain games and what the systems are about, and talking about specific game settings, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. I do a lot of that stuff. Yeah, like and subscribe. I would appreciate it. I'm actually going to have a link down below to Drive Through RPG. It's an affiliate link. If you purchase anything after clicking that link, 15 days after clicking that link, I get 5% of the proceeds. It would really help me. It would really help the channel. So I would appreciate, if you did some of your shopping for tabletop stuff that way. Cool. Yeah, so I really hope you join me for the journey.